Hello everyone and welcome back. As you can see, I got a coat of paint on the spreader here. It looks pretty good. There's a few spots I'll have to touch up, but for the most part, I'm really happy with it. So now it's time to start putting the wood on it. If you guys have any questions about the inner workings of any of this stuff, or how the ratchet system works or anything like that, you'll just have to let me know. I didn't get most of that in the video because I just was doing it at odd hours, didn't have time to get videotaped what I wanted to. Like I said, if you have questions, let me know. So now one of the last steps is to put the wood in, and then originally this would have been painted, the wood I believe would have been painted green. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the wood green, and then I got to decide what I'm going to do with tires yet. Some of these old truck tires are stiff enough that I probably wouldn't need to do anything right now. It might change once you start loading it, but especially the one on the other side, it doesn't have any give at all. And so I got a matching one to the one on the other side there. I did get some truck tires from a guy that I know that I was going to put on here that would hold air. You know, I want to put the correct or some sort of implement tire on it. It's probably going to be more of like a tractor tread style tire than the old crisscross pattern, because I don't know that I can get that anywhere. I would like to at some point put a more correct tire on here. But for now, I would really like to be able to use this thing, maybe even as soon as this next weekend. So we'll see what happens there. Thankfully the tires aren't hard to take on and off, and I have a second set, so I could get a second set mounted while I have the other set on the spreader, and I can paint the rims up and everything. But for now, we're going to get started on the wood. Originally, I don't know what size the boards would have been. There's nowhere that I can find that gives me that information, so I just had to make my best guess. Unfortunately, the original boards would have been tongued and grooved. I decided not to spend the $100 on the router bit set for that. It just, to me, it wasn't worth the extra money. These boards seem pretty solid. Part of the reason you would tongue and groove those boards is so that they don't, one board doesn't bow or the other one stays straight. So we'll see how it goes. This isn't treated wood. I don't expect this wood to last forever. So, you know, if I end up redoing this down the road, maybe we end up putting a different wood on it. But for now, we're going to run with what we got here, and we'll see how it turns out. Alright guys, so the floor is in. It was pretty uneventful. The only thing that really was a little bit of a pain was I didn't make any measurements before I started laying the wood down, and I don't honestly know that it would have made any difference anyways, but for whatever reason the rear of the spreader is wider than the front, and so I had ripped the board in the center here to work with the measurements that I had measured at the front, and then got to the last board and I had a gap on the far end, and so I just bought a wider board and I just cut it at an angle, ripped it at an angle to fit. I'm just going to chalk that up to this thing was built in the 50s sometime, and they didn't have as good a technology as they do nowadays, because I looked and there's really no good way to adjust it. There is slots on the rails, but the axle assembly is not slotted, and so I could suck that back end in, but it was still going to be wide here in the center. So I just decided to not go forward with any of that. I let it sit where it naturally wanted to sit, and I just made the wood fit it. It's really not going to make any difference in any grand scheme of things, and so I'd prefer it that way than to have it all twisted and torqued all over the place. So now the fun part is going to be, or not so fun part is going to be getting the sides on this thing. It's going to be much more difficult. I've got to cut angles in the back. I've got to cut holes for the where the beater goes through, and then I got to cut for this dip here on the back side. For that one, I'll probably end up making a cardboard template, but we're on the home stretch now. We just got to get the sides on. There's a few boards we got to put on the front, and then we can start painting the wood. I debated painting the floorboards. I debated pulling them back off, painting them, and bolting them back down. I think I'll just lay underneath it and paint above my head. Not ideal, but it doesn't need to look as nice on the bottom anyways. It just needs to keep it from rotting. And I'm seeing a number of places that need to be touched up, which is to be expected on a big project like this. And so we'll go through, do some touch up, get the wood in, and then we'll get the whole thing painted, and hopefully we'll be ready to hit the field here in a couple weeks. Alright guys, as you can see, I've got all the sideboards on both sides here now. Wasn't too big of a deal, but I did have to rip the top board here because there's obviously not something on the market that's the right size anymore. Back in the day, I'm sure they built this when nominal sizes and actual sizes weren't a thing. So I had to rip that top board to make it fit, no big deal. There were some cutouts I had to make on the back. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but where the beaters and stuff were at in the back, I had to make some cutouts, and then I had to angle it down at the end. It turned out pretty nice. I made cardboard templates for that, which seems to help quite a bit. So all that's left now for wood is just a little bit that sits up here in the front. I think I've made the decision that I'm actually going to pull all of the wood back off of this thing and paint it on the sawhorses, just for the fact that it's going to be a lot easier to paint. It's going to look a lot nicer. I might just do one side of it for time's sake and do the other side while it's in the spreader, but you know, to brush paint all of the outsides here, and especially the floor, to brush paint the underside of the floor is just going to be probably too much work to do. Plus then you don't get any paint behind the angle iron and stuff. And so I think I'm going to take it off and just roll it on with a roller, just so it gets a better coverage, and it isn't as difficult with all the stuff in the way. But I think we're going to leave it at that for now. This will be the end of the episode. Thanks for watching, guys. Please leave a like, share, subscribe, and check back for more.